The synopsis begins with a group of women surrounding a young woman in the middle of the forest, administering an ancestral remedy. But suddenly, the image fades. The film transports us to a vibrant restaurant, where the bustle of chefs in full swing creates an electrifying atmosphere. In this organized chaos, a young female chef stands out for her skill. Her name is not mentioned, but it is evident that she's the most talented person there. She has spent 7 years perfecting her skills under the supervision of Marcelo, the restaurant manager, who runs everything with a firm hand. At nightfall, the chef finds a moment to talk to Marcelo, revealing her gratitude and all that she has learned, but also her future plans. Marcelo, sensing that her words foreshadow a farewell, tries to persuade her with tempting offers, even going so far as to offer her double her salary. However, she firmly explains to him that her decision is made. She will open her own restaurant with a friend, seeking a space where she can fully express her culinary art. Ariana, known in the culinary world simply as Chef, makes an irrevocable decision in front of Marcelo. She will leave in search of new horizons. At dawn, she ventures to a solitary spot, the site of an old, abandoned, and forgotten restaurant. Upon arrival, she is greeted by a bleak panorama of deterioration. A stench of decay permeates the air, and insects scatter as she passes. The restaurant clearly requires a deep cleaning and renovation. At that moment of reflection, Andres appears, a man who, with keys in hand, reveals that he has acquired the place. He declares that, from now on, the restaurant will be Ariana's domain, and she will lead the kitchen. Now, after handing her the keys, he leads her to a preparatory meeting with those who will be her future collaborators. During the journey, Ariana meets Lucia, who, although she does not possess Ariana's culinary skills, shows enough competence to be her right hand. Despite the gap in abilities, Ariana gladly accepts Lucia's company, preparing to face the upcoming challenges together. Andres also mentions an impending visit from investors, crucial for the future of the restaurant, scheduled for Sunday. He stresses the importance of Ariana's presence that day, emphasizing the weight that her leadership and talent will have on the impression they will make on these potential sponsors. Everything is ready for us to start working. This way, we can offer a banquet to the investors, and, captivated, they will surely decide to increase their investment. With this plan in mind, Ariana prepares for the day and decides to spend the night in the restaurant. The place, shrouded in shadows and silence, began to unsettle her. However, with the arrival of dawn, Alvin appears and joins her to clean the space. Working side by side, they make the restaurant shine. Ariana stays up late, cleaning and preparing dishes for the following day, before finally resting. But upon waking, she discovers to her horror that the ingredients were infested with insects. Not just a few, but an alarming amount, ruining everything she had prepared. Furious, she confronts Andres by phone, reproaching him for not warning her about the infestation. Andres, surprised, claims ignorance about the condition of the premises, but urges her to somehow pull off the dinner as the investors are about to arrive. Determined, Ariana assures him that she will do whatever it takes and quickly hands Alvin an extensive list of ingredients that she will need from a nearby market. "Keep the receipt and make sure you bring everything we ordered," Ariana told Alvin. He nodded, took the car keys and left, returning at sunset with every ingredient requested. With everything at hand, Ariana set to work in the kitchen, and by the time the investors arrived, there was already a variety of dishes ready to taste. Among those present were Andreas and a young woman named Yaral Sen, who also tasted the dishes that Ariana served with hope and nervousness. As the investors savored the food, Ariana noticed, with horror, a worm crawling on one of the plates, although it seemed that no one else had seen it. Then, she observed with growing panic that there were more worms on another investor's plate. Quickly, she dropped her spoon while exclaiming that it was hot and apologized profusely, trying to handle the situation discreetly. Finally, the investors finished their meal, and one of them commented that while it was acceptable, he found nothing exceptional about it. It was something that could be found in any restaurant. After issuing his judgment, he left. Devastated by the criticism and the incidents, Ariana discovered that the real culprit behind the ruin of her crops was a small rabbit. Armed with determination and a knife, she approached the animal, which, sensing danger, fled. Ariana followed it, finding herself in a small garden after the chase. Ariana was astonished by how green and lush everything was around her. In that green splendor, she discovered ripe tomatoes that she began to carefully collect. In an unexpected stumble, she slipped and fell to the ground, feeling for a moment the irrational fear that a malevolent sorceress was approaching her. But that fear quickly dissipated when she woke up in her bed, with Andreas by her side. He confessed that he could not employ her, as doing so would mean his financial ruin. He suggested that she return to Marcelo's restaurant, but Ariana, with a hint of desperation in her voice, begged him to reconsider. He had also fired her from that place, and she didn't want to leave. She begged for just 2 weeks to prove her ability, promising to create a dish so extraordinary that no one had ever seen it before. Andreas agreed, albeit with reservations, and left. With determination, Ariana began her preparation, immersing herself in books by renowned chefs in search of inspiration to innovate. Lycia, present in the kitchen, learned from Ariana how to handle the knife to cut vegetables with precision, even in the dark. Ariana extended her work until late at night, although her culinary attempts were still far from perfect. Exhausted, she nibbled on some of the tomatoes she had brought from the garden. Their fresh, pure taste encouraged her to keep trying, rekindling her hope and energy to face the challenge ahead. Ariana dedicated herself to meticulously collecting all the available flowers, leaves, and plants. Her goal was to transform them into a unique spice that would give a distinctive and elegant touch to her culinary creations. In the restaurant building, she discovered an additional room, full of objects that attested to the place's past prosperous times. Along with Lucia, she worked tirelessly until late at night, developing a new type of dish that, when tasted by Lucia, turned out to be exquisite. Both felt that they were about to achieve the desired success. After finishing their work, Ariana and Lucia were relaxing outdoors. Lucia mentioned that she would go home and return the next day. At that moment, Ariana noticed the presence of a man at the edge of the forest, staring at them intently. Intrigued, she tried to approach, but the man quickly vanished without a trace, leaving her in uncertainty. It was then that Elvin appeared. Ariana, taking advantage of his presence, inquired about the previous owner of the restaurant. Elvin revealed that he didn't know much, but there were rumors among the neighboring towns that labeled the woman a witch, and that was why they had prevented her from operating the restaurant freely. As night fell, and she found herself alone after everyone had left, Ariana returned to the room where she had been working earlier, determined to continue with her project, despite the mysteries that surrounded the place. She had been here before, gazing intently at the numerous glass jars lined up in the room. Venturing into a small adjacent room, she felt a chill. The prevailing darkness enveloped her completely. Suddenly, a bottle placed in a corner began to move on its own, a spectacle that filled her with terror and prompted her to leave hastily. That night, after a restless sleep, she woke up with the arrival of Andreas the next morning, who enthusiastically announced that he had prepared several dishes. After tasting the culinary delights, Andreas exclaimed, convinced that they had created something extraordinary. "If we offer this to our customers, our restaurant will prosper," he stated. In a burst of inspiration, Andreas decided to invite potential investors, announcing the imminent opening of the restaurant and the opportunity to invest in its exclusive culinary offerings. However, in the afternoon, Ariana found her kitchen in total chaos, utensils everywhere, evidence of a clear intrusion. At that moment, she spotted a man amidst the disorder, and upon inquiring about his identity, Andreas recognized Magnus, a former colleague with a troubled past. The situation was resolved with the arrival of an ambulance that took Magnus away, restoring calm. When night fell, Ariana found herself alone in the restaurant, enveloped in a thick silence. Suddenly, her heart stopped when she saw a figure that looked like a witch, which prompted her to flee the place in terror. Convinced that all her recent misfortunes were the work of this apparition, in a fit of fury, she razed all the plants in the garden, destroying everything in her path. At dawn, Ariana returned to work, finding that 3 or 4 chefs, including Lucia, were already in the kitchen. However, the tension was palpable, and, in a moment of stress, Ariana harshly reproached them, criticizing their performance. Her hurtful words pushed Lucia to leave the restaurant, leaving her completely alone to handle the workload. As she faced the day, Ariana suffered from disturbing visions, insects buzzing around her and rotten food in every corner, convinced that they were hallucinations sent by the witch. While preparing the food, she accidentally cut her finger, but, showing resilience, she encouraged her colleagues to continue while she tended to the wound. The tranquility was broken when a customer in the restaurant suddenly began to choke. The situation became critical, and they rushed her to the hospital, where she unfortunately died. This tragic event plunged Ariana into deep worry, fearing the consequences this incident could bring upon the restaurant and herself. With the dawn, she begins to feel uneasy about her future, but soon immerses herself in her daily tasks. In the kitchen, all the chefs are active, including Andreas, who approaches Ariana and with a definitive tone informs her that she will no longer be able to work at the restaurant. Lucia, an inexperienced young woman, will take her place. Ariana, indignant, argues that Lucia is too inexperienced to take on so much responsibility. However, Andreas is inflexible, assuring her that he will not take unnecessary risks and that he is determined not to let Ariana affect the restaurant's reputation. Ariana warns him that a press critic will soon visit the restaurant and that a poor culinary performance could ruin him financially and devastate his public image. Despite her compelling argument, Andreas remains firm and holds her in a corner of the premises, ordering her to stay there until all the work is completed. Ariana, frustrated, reminds Andreas of the case of Magnus, a former colleague who, according to her, went mad not because of dementia, but because of the treatment he received from Andreas. He, ignoring her pleas, locks her in that place with no possibility of escape, while she screams desperately for help. But no one comes. Not even Lucia, also present at the scene, pays attention to her cries. Lucia, overwhelmed by the responsibility, seeks support from Andreas, admitting that she cannot handle the restaurant alone and that she needs Ariana's experience. However, Andreas assures her that Ariana has already collected her pay and left, leaving Lucia with no choice but to face the challenge alone. Meanwhile, Ariana is trapped in a space reminiscent of a basement, where suddenly the bottles begin to move on their own. Convinced that it's the work of a witch's spirit, Ariana bravely challenges the specter, proclaiming that she is not afraid of it. When the movement stops, she discovers a hidden exit that looks like a cave. With determination, Ariana explores the narrow cave and, inside, finds the corpse of the woman who the locals called a witch. At that moment, the narrative transports us through a flashback that shows the villagers chasing this woman, accusing her of practicing black magic. The story reveals that the witch took refuge in this place to hide, and that, while digging the cave, she found her last refuge where she finally died. However, in a twist in the story, it is revealed that she, along with other witches, used her knowledge of black magic not to do evil, but to heal the people of the village, a fact that the villagers never came to understand. Back at the restaurant, diners begin to show their dissatisfaction with the food, foreshadowing trouble for Andreas and Lucia, who are unaware of the true talents and history of the woman they tried to push aside. With no options left and driven by the need to escape, Ariana takes the shovel that the witch had used to dig the cave and starts digging deeper, finally discovering another way out. Upon emerging, she comes across a rabbit. In an act of desperation, she catches it and quickly breaks its neck. With the rabbit in hand and a disheveled appearance, Ariana returns to the restaurant. Upon arrival, her deteriorated appearance and the dead rabbit in her arms cause commotion among the diners, who wonder what has happened to her. The general confusion prompts the customers to leave the place. Ariana, without stopping, also goes out and lights a fire outside. Attracted by the flame, people return and gather around the fire. Andreas, observing the situation from a distance, understands the opportunity and orders the tables to be taken outside and the rabbit to be roasted on the fire that Ariana has prepared. The food is served directly from the fire, and to everyone's surprise, it turns out to be exceptionally delicious. The people, captivated by the flavor, eat with their hands in a rustic and communal atmosphere. Ariana, meanwhile, watches distantly and thoughtfully. In her hands, she holds a ring that she found next to the witch's corpse in the cave. Upon putting it on, a subtle but powerful change occurs. The spirit of the witch seems to have found a new host in her, endowing her with a supernatural culinary ability. This revelation closes the film, leaving an echo of mystery and transformation that lingers in the memory of the viewers.